Hello, everyone. Um, welcome, everybody. This is Dr. Alicia with Coaching with Dr. Alicia, and I'm here again this week with my lovely friend. I'm in the Midwest, and my lovely friend Dr. Cris uh, is on the West Coast, and we are saying hello to you. We are here to talk about a really interesting topic. We've been talking about it for I think we talk about it, Cris, just about every time we meet. And
Yeah, I think so.
every time we have a conversation, we end up talking about it. But I really think it's good. It's really nice to have a conversation about some of the things that we're seeing and some of the trends that we're seeing in terms of young people and what we're hearing women say about men and what we're hearing men say about women. And we do have hope, and there are some glimpses of wonderful interactions, but we've been really talking about how some of the interactions we've seen, particularly been picked up with men, have been, what's the word? Have been talked about in a way that we think is not very hopeful. And also, sometimes I wanted to also bring up, because I didn't want us to seem pretty biased, I also want to talk about how women as well put some unrealistic pressure on men. And so I think what I titled today's presentation is Gender Roles, Unpacking Toxic Manhood, which we see a lot of, and also this feminism, quote unquote, if we want to use, there's several different types of feminism, and I think we'll kind of, maybe we'll get to some of that. But anyway, so Dr. Cris has a PhD in industrial organizational psychology, PhD as well in clinical psych, and she's super smart and has like written a dissertation on everything there is to know about clinical psych. And you talk about, isn't it workplace diversity? Is that what your IO PhD in, Dr. Cris?
Yes, actually, that was one of the topics I focused on, but eventually the dissertation was on change management within a merger environment and looking at the psychological variables or clinical psychological variables that come into play when you're dealing with change. And I kind of fell upon that because one of the things that organizations need to do in promoting diversity, equity, inclusion is manage change.
Ah, okay, very good. And I do remember like coming to visit you in San Diego when you were studying, and I was in my master's program at the time. Do you remember that? And I'm like, wow, look at all the stuff you have to memorize. I was like, no way. Like you have to memorize all sorts of stuff. But anyway, so we've known each other since college. I've known you about as long as I've known my husband, Dr. Boyce. I've known you almost 30 years now. Probably, yeah, about 30 years. About the same time I met you. Maybe I met Boyce a year or so before I met you, but we were in this program together that encouraged individuals to get their PhD, especially people of color. And sure enough, that program worked, because here
It
we are
sure
sitting
did.
here talking about it. But anyway, this is a topic. I want to get into the topic. And talk about, Cris, we'll start with you. Talk about, lay this out for us about how and why you came up in particular with this topic about toxic manhood.
Well, and thank you, Alicia, because you know I have been bending your ear for a minute about this topic. I think my concern has been growing over time as I see more, witness more things that are along this line. But I'll start with, I think we can all relate, and we've all seen how politically, like in the bigger picture across the United States, we've had some backlash, if you will, to minority groups, to include not just racial minorities, but also sexual orientation minorities,
Mhm.
as well as women, right? I could not believe that we actually are in a time in 2020s where we are looking at reversing the whole women's rights to make their decisions on their pregnancy and limiting those rights. But I think from there, that was concerning enough. But what I started to see in my own world is young men around me who actually seem to be aligned with this backlash, in the sense that they feel that it is unfair that women now have certain rights. And they feel that maybe that is actually diluting their masculinity. So it's interesting to kind of think about, just, if we take one level, it does seem, as I'm listening, at least to the people around me, that it's a reaction to women's roles. Like you talked about gender roles, women's gender roles have changed over time. And while the changes started decades ago, I think we are in a time where we haven't arrived by any means, in terms of equality between the genders, but we certainly are at a time more than any of our ancestors, that women have more rights, more say, than they have had in the past. Historically, we can start out from the time we couldn't vote and so forth. But historically, we haven't had rights. And then, of course, then maybe we were given the rights, but then systemic type of oppression existed against women, that led to things like not seeing, for example, a lot of a high equal percentage, let's say, of male and female CEOs in American companies. And so, but we are seeing an increase, and you talked about hope earlier, and that is some hope. What is scaring me is it kind of seems like we still have a lot of these younger generation men who are actually against it. And they're feeling like it's unfair that women have certain rights. And what more do we want? That was another comment made to me. What more do we as women want? So it's at minimum, I could say that there certainly seems to be maybe some questioning of gender roles where maybe men fit in this changing environment where women do have more power or more equality than we've had historically. And, we talked, I think, last week about the fixed pie. Are they looking at it as a fixed pie where there's only so much pie? So if the men are giving more power to the women, does that mean there's less power for men? And I think that's a very toxic way of looking at the situation, because you can react from there, from a place of missing out, not having things taken away. Nobody wants things taken away, right? I don't know about you, Alicia, but
Yeah.
I don't want things taken away. So, but I don't think that's the case. But let me stop there and see, because I have been really wanted to hear what you have to say about this and what you've been observing in your world.
Yeah, it's, what you're saying is really fascinating, because I'm seeing this a lot in my office, just in general, right? Where I'll have, I'll be working with a couple, and it comes up always, where the woman is just like, listen, I'm working a full-time job. I'm coming home and I'm doing all the cooking. I'm also doing most of the cleaning, and I really need help. And I'm tired and I'm exhausted. I got these kids that I need to take care of. And it's just way too much. And I think what's happening is that a lot of men, not always, but sometimes I will get a lot of men to say, well, when I come home from a long day of work, I don't want to sit and take on these responsibilities. I want to sit down. I'm tired. Like, I need to have a place to kind of decompress first before I go into a household with all these kids talking to me and there's garbage to take out and all these things to do. So what I'm finding is that there are a lot of modern families, modern marriages right now that I'm seeing where couples are really trying to have conversations where they're trying to share the load with each other. And I really do think, for the majority of the men, they do understand that their wives are taking on so much more. They're just kind of stuck about what to do. I don't know what to do. And I've seen a lot of men say, I'm gonna volunteer for the soccer team to play in the soccer team or baseball team, and I'm gonna get more involved. Like they want to get way more involved in their children's lives, but they themselves have a lot of pressure and they're stressed. And I think what's happening is that a lot of the household responsibility, a lot of the raising of the children is falling on the shoulders of a lot of women.
Absolutely. I have heard a lot of the same complaints from women on my end as well. Um, and uh, I can empathize with men not knowing what to do. Um,
Yeah.
I think in some ways, if I take a big step back and try to look at this, it from their perspective as much as I can, being a woman, I could see where it would be ambiguous at minimum, but confusing even for some men where, if women are, if things have shifted, again, I go back to change, if things have changed and now I see the women doing all of this stuff, where is my role?
Yeah.
Especially if you have a woman who is equally bringing in the money. Now, I will say my comments would be very different if I was speaking from the lens of a woman. But I could see, or I can kind of empathize and see from the man's lens that perhaps, things have shifted so much, they may be wondering, well, where do I fit into this new picture? What do you think about
Mhm.
that?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, especially in particular, we're finding a lot of households where uh, women are actually bringing in more money than men, and
Hmm.
they're starting to out earn their husbands, or they're starting to out earn when they're on the dating scene. They're like, shoot, I'm dating these men. I'm making more money than they are. It's like, God, I
Right.
feel like I'm gonna be somebody's sugar mama before it's over. So
Exactly.
they're talking about this. And so but I think I can't even understand like some of the things that I've heard from men, particularly in my office, is that it really gets to them, because it's almost like men for in mainstream media, men are giving messages that if you're not a breadwinner and if you don't make a lot of money, you're not even worthy of being in a relationship. And that's what I'm
Mm,
seeing a lot. And so they really are internalizing these messages, and they're not dating. They're not even they can have women around them that they're actually interested in, but they just don't feel like they're worthy until they have their money a certain way. Their checkbook has to be a certain way in order for them to feel like they're worthy to be in a relationship. And I question all of that. Like, do you
absolutely.
talk to women? Is this really what women say they really want? So
Exactly.
I think that's just something that I have seen and heard, and even from some of my relative friends, my relatives, my cousins and uncles, they really do feel, hey, I would be dating, but I'm not dating. These are really good men. I would be
Hmm.
dating, but I'm not going to date because I want to make sure my money is right.
Well, I think that is such an interesting point to consider. Um, the first thing I think of is if I'm thinking of the younger generation, how often it may take men to, just like women, men and women alike, to reach a certain point in their career where they're actually enjoying the success, reaping the rewards of their hard work, right? Um, and so maybe dating in the 20s and 30s, they could feel that way. Another point, though, I think of too, Alicia, is I don't know. I mean, we're friends, and I think, you know, you and I don't look at it that way. I don't know. I can kind of still remember when we were out and about back in the day, you know, 30 years ago when we were single and living the life and in our 20s,
Yeah.
you know, we weren't trying to be like, hey, you know, meeting men like, hey, okay, so how much you make? You know, I didn't think about those things. And I do, you know, maybe there are women that do, and no judgment. You know, it is what it is. Everybody has their priorities and what they're looking for. But I think if we're talking in a very like general or more looking at it from a systemic point of view, um, I could see where men might feel that way, but geez, Alicia, don't you think? I mean, I feel like if it was my girlfriend talking, I'd be like, well, if that's who you're meeting, they're not for you. Meaning, if you're a man and you're meeting a woman and all she's about is money, then is she really for you? Is that really the partner you want long term?
Yeah, and it's so funny because men are in such a deep-seated desire for intimacy. They want that
Mm,
intimacy and closeness just as much as women do. And I think if they're being honest with themselves, they can come, they'll come to that sort of realization on their own. And I question a lot of men who think that all they want to have, oh, I was in my 30s, all I would be doing is having a whole bunch of women all over. One woman on
mm-hmm.
Monday, one on Tuesday, one on Wednesday. But the thing is that you're still living a life that's very empty because nobody knows you. If you're with a different woman
Right,
every night, how can somebody see you? How can somebody interact with
right,
you? How can somebody
right.
know exactly who you are and you get to know someone else? I mean, it is something that, and I think that men are given their, a notch on your belt. They're given these messages where,
Yes.
the more women you get, the more valuable you are. The more women and more money that you get, the more valuable you are. And I think, I think it's a mistake to fall into that because you I think they're pretty lonely and they're not as
Well,
happy as you know as they would want to think to be.
right, as they're aspiring to be, exactly. Well,
Yeah.
and I can't help but comment on, girl, if I was a man, I'm like, that's expensive. I'm gonna have different women and stressful. I'm gonna have different women. I'm gonna take them out every night. Like that's a lot to handle. But aside from that, I completely agree with you. Like there is no intimacy that can be developed. I mean, there's a limited, at best, a limited intimacy that can be had in those kind of situations when the man chooses to live his life that way. Okay, and again, no judgment. That's cool if that's where you're at in life and that's what you're seeking. Um, I guess what I'm wondering though is so when they get to the point of wanting intimacy and wanting to
Hmm.
because like you pointed out they're lonely. Okay, so they want to make a connection. Um Again, I go back to well, the woman that you picked, if in the beginning the whole interest was in what you're so you got these Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever, sat through Sunday women, okay, of those, if if you know you got 5 out of 7 all only interested in your money, that should be a flag to them, don't you think?
What do you mean, like a flag in terms of
So if
what?
I can,
Like, hmm
yes. I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. So, you know, if I'm a man, I got all these women. You know, I got my roster going, and you know, 5 out of 7 of them, their behaviors, their messages, what they were interested in me or was attracted
yes,
to me from the beginning was my money, because I
yeah,
drive this nice car, because they know that I live in this nice neighborhood. Is that really the woman you want to be intimate with?
right. Because if you're basing your relationship just on financial security, then it will never last because first of all, that's not love. Second of
Okay.
all, when you base it in, I mean, money is going to ebb and flow. So as soon as the money dries up,
Exactly.
then that means the relationship is over, and there is no true intimacy. There is no true friendship. It's just transactional. You do this for me, and I'll do
Exactly.
this for you. And in the long run, what I'm finding is the reason why I'm talking about the emptiness is because when it's transactional that way, definitely when it comes to money, and you're basing your relationship on this one thing, it won't last very long. There is no love involved, and it's a very shallow sort of existence. And I think
Yes.
a lot of men are just kind of like, well, dang, how would you feel if you're a man and you come into a space and the woman is just like, just pay the bills and just get on out of here. I don't want you around. All I want you for is to be like
Right.
an ATM machine. I mean, can you imagine how
Right.
used men feel?
Oh, and I wonder if that is some of where the backlash is coming. Is this a
Yeah.
situation now, and especially
Yes.
in the younger generation, where that's what they feel? I don't know what's going on. I will say I don't really have a feel for what's going on with the women necessarily, in the dating field. More in the 30s, I'm seeing it, and they're crying. They're not literally crying, but they're seeking out a solid man. Not
Mhm.
solid like you've got money, but solid like this is a man that's gonna be my partner in life. We're gonna work towards the same goal. He doesn't have to have money, but if he's working towards that goal, hey,
Yeah.
you know, because a lot of times us women, I mean, shoot, Alicia, we didn't finish with our degree until what? We were well in our 30s, right? I don't know about
Yeah.
you, but
Oh
I
yeah.
was. And
Yeah, I was.
so
Hmm.
exactly. So it has taken us time to get to the point in our careers even that we're reaping the successes of it, or reaping even if you want to go
Hmm.
financial, shoot, student loans. Can I say student loans?
Yes. Student loans,
There
boy.
was That's right.
Hmm.
And so, women, I don't know. I really am so interested to better understand this perspective that they have, that they,
Yeah.
meaning men, have, because I do feel like at least the women in our generation, and I would say a lot of the women in the next generation under us are the women that I don't know about below that, but they are the women that are crying out like I'm working, like you said earlier. I'm working.
Hmm.
I'm taking care of the house. I'm taking care of the kids. Now I gotta tell you, like, can you please do X, Y, Z? Take out the trash, help with the kids, get them in the bath. Now you gotta be manager on top of it. After you feel the same way as that man does in your life, it's like, dang, I just want to come home from work and have a moment.
Yeah.
But let
Yeah,
me
you
ask you,
do.
because you're a mom, like how many times have you walked through the door and you want a moment and it's instantaneously you open the door and
Yeah,
there you go. It's on
and
and popping.
here's what's funny. And now that I work from home, I'm just like, God, I would, and sometimes I like wish I could go to an office. So at least I can have lunch in peace. So now, like,
Yes,
even with COVID, it was just everything all at once, all together. I mean, it was a
absolutely.
little overwhelming. But
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, the thing about money when you were talking about, particularly men, it's like they use their money because if they feel like they're just not good enough. They feel like I'm only as good as what my bank account can give me. And so I think it's just interesting how men will try to front or try to showcase how much money they have, or like try to like give messages to women when they're in that dating phase, to kind of let them know that they have all this money, because that's going to compensate for something that's internally they feel like they're not worthy, and they're only
Yes.
worthy if it's just them and their money. So they put their worth on this sort of external thing instead of knowing that you're just good enough just who you are. Who and what you are is good enough.
Exactly. And this is why I love talking to you and I wanted your input
Uh-huh.
because that right there, I think what may be happening is at least in some cases, men are projecting that onto women that this
Yes.
is what they
Yes.
want. They didn't bother
Yes.
to ask. They're not looking for signs. It occurred to me in one of my conversations, in the last month or so, with a young man, and he's in his upper 20s, early 30s, and um, you know, the idea was just like this is how it's explained to me is this is what women want, this is what they, and I really kind of stopped and said, but wait a minute, what do you want, and why
Yeah.
aren't you looking for that kind of woman? Don't go looking for the women who, because I don't want the money, I don't need their money. Okay, believe me, us women who have money, we ain't trying to give her money
Mhm.
away, but we're looking for a partner. And and I think about it now as you said that, and what occurred to me is maybe part of what needs to happen is letting these men know that no, helping them understand, no, your worth is not directly tied to how much you make. Yes, you need to make efforts. Okay,
Mhm.
you need to
Everybody
be
has to
making
work. Everybody has to have
goals.
an income.
That's
Yeah.
right. Everybody
Yes.
everybody needs to be there. Okay, but things happen. Girl, we
Yeah.
know. Life
It
happens.
does.
You might find yourself going down a path and in a job or career line you don't like. Okay, maybe you're making a switch. Does that devalue you as a man? No, to
Yeah.
me, I don't know about you, but to me, I'm thinking, wow, what a I would just hear that and say, okay, number one, this man must be aware, right? He must have some level of awareness because he's in tune to the fact that he's in a career line that's not working for him. He's not paying attention to, oh, this
Yeah.
is the career line that I'm gonna make the money. This is a man who has taken time and he's gonna be brave enough
Yeah.
to go out there and say, let me figure out a different way. Let me find that career line that makes me happy. Because, you know, it's unfair. I will say this, we want to talk about feminism too. It is unfair. I will say there are things unfair because historically we hear the adage of, oh, make mama happy, the household's happy. But you know what? If we want to
Yeah.
get real, Alicia, right? eh, If if a household is going to be happy, mom and dad is going to be happy. Dad
Yes.
can't be over there. Dad can't be over there like miserable. He's going to have an impact
Yeah.
on the household. We're not reaching full of efficacy, self-efficacy, as a group if dad is not happy. So, of
Yeah.
course, yes.
I don't like the statement happy wife, happy life. I
Right.
really don't happy. Yeah, I don't like that statement because I really do think both spouses need to be happy, and fulfilled in the relationship.
Absolutely.
And just
Absolutely.
because it is the woman who's talking about it more, who's addressing it, who may be more
Mhm.
vocal about it, maybe that's why they're
Mhm.
saying just give her whatever she wants and just let her go on, because men need to have a voice too. It can't just be whatever the woman says. So I think that
Mhm.
I think it should be a united thing, a shared thing, a negotiated thing where there's compromise and there's a win-win and you're working together to make
Yes.
sure everybody is fulfilled. And if you are,
That's
if you're
yes.
short, if you're short a couple of dollars, I'm there for you. I'm there for
That's
you.
right.
We are a
That's
team.
right. We're a team. We got the same
Yeah.
goal. Now I'm gonna shift this for a second
Okay.
because I wanted to definitely get your take on this. So, have you seen Working Moms on Netflix? The
Work.
series.
No.
Highly
No.
recommended.
What
Highly
is it
recommended.
about?
It's about working moms. No, but it is a series on Netflix. I think they're in their 7th season that just came out. And The reason I bring it up is because I was just watching an episode in the 7th season. I won't ruin it by asking you, but I would
Okay.
highly recommend you look at it. It's really interesting. I don't know. There's definitely areas, because what you're looking at in the story is, let's see, one, two, three, four main characters that are women. They're working moms. One's a
Uh-huh.
psychologist. One owns her business. One's like a marketing person that ends up starting her own business. One starts a women's group, a mom's women's group. So, and then,
Is
you
it a
know, you
reality show?
follow.
It's not a reality show, is it?
No, 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 no. It's an actual like
Drama?
fiction
Okay.
drama show. Yeah, drama and comedy. It is funny.
Okay.
There are definitely parts that's funny. But the thing I wanted to bring up, besides recommending you check it out, because I think you will enjoy it, is there was a scene. Okay, so the woman, one of the main women characters, who is the marketing guru, she owns her business at this point. Um, they get um, they get a client who has developed birth control for men. So the scenario is that women no longer have to take the pill because men can take it now. And it's called
Oh, okay.
seedless, by the way, seedless, which
Oh,
I remind me, because I think a lot of the other parts outside of financial for men, in terms of, I'm just
manhood.
wondering,
Yes.
yes, their worth would be about being fertile or being able to spread their
Yes.
seed, right?
Yeah,
So
like
it was
Nick
a
Cannon.
yes, it was a
Hmm.
very interesting show. And the part that, there was many parts that are interesting, but the part that I really want to highlight is the woman who owns the marketing business and has the client come to her. She eventually goes home to talk to her husband. Now, her husband, I think in the show, they're maybe in their 40s. Her
Uh-huh.
husband at this point has seemed to be very fluid, or very accepting of the fluidity of gender roles. He seems
Okay.
to be very, he comes across as very supportive of his wife. He doesn't seem to be in any way threatened by his wife's success.
Okay.
Now, she comes home, though, and says, hey, check this out. I got this client and this is the product. And he said, are you crazy? You
Oh,
you you should not take this client. And she says, why? This is great. He said, what man do you think is going to be willing to take this pill? I mean, do you know what's going to come? Did you see the side effects on this pill? Okay, and Alicia, I'm going to tell you right now,
uh-huh.
the side effects were exactly what the women's side effects are when they take the pill: bloating,
Oh,
emotional, mood fluctuations, as they would say scientifically, or, the pharmaceuticals would represent it as a side effect. There was different things that came with it, and it was very interesting, because the wife, that I was referring to earlier, kind of responded like, excuse me, and she said, that's pretty misogynistic, because that's what
ah,
we've been doing. And he said, well, whatever, I don't care, you are not going to get anybody to buy this product. It's dead in the water. If I was you, you've been having a lot of success in your business lately. Don't even do this one. Well, she decided to do it anyway. And the interesting thing is, she comes home a day or two later, and he says, you know what, honey? I reconsidered. And you're right. I was being misogynistic about it.
uh-huh, uh-huh.
You have dealt with all of these things. And you know what? I'm going to try it. Let me try it.
Oh,
And he says, yep, get me the product. I'm going to start it right now. And you no longer have to take the pill. And, of course, she was happy. But what was very interesting, and this is what I like when it's not reality, like it can
uh-huh.
show, art can mimic life, life can mimic art. But what was very interesting is so in that actual episode, by the end, what we found was the side effects were affecting the men. So the woman comes home and she's like, let's have sex. I don't care. Let's not talk. I'm not really trying to hear you. He's like all into the show and wanting to tell her. She's like, no, can we just have sex?
So she started taking on this masculine role in the marriage.
Exactly. Or what I was thinking even more specifically is she's no longer having any of the side effects of the pill. She stopped. Now, this is fiction. So it doesn't happen that quickly. But supposedly what they were trying to convey in the show is like, okay, she no longer has these symptoms. She's doing great. She's feeling good. She's not having the side effects from the pill because she's no longer taking it. But guess what? Now she comes home to her husband and he's having side effects. And now he's the one that is more wanting to communicate. Like what we would see is the traditional role of women. Exactly. It was a switch, like you said, to some degree. And she didn't know what to do. She's like, are you kidding me? And what was fascinating to me is from a psychological point of view is, guess what? She was just as irritated as men get irritated with women when we're going through our stuff. Oh, can you get over it? Can you just turn the TV show off?
Impatience. Wow.
Impatience, exactly. So, I thought that was very interesting because it flips it around on women. No matter what, we're embedded in who we are, right? We know our experience, our own personal experience is best. We have reactions to it over time. And the thing is like, in reality, in the big picture, we've shifted. Women and our roles have shifted in the big picture.
Yes, it has. Yeah.
Now, but we were the lead in that. We've been pushing that. We've been advocating for it. The men are the reactionary part of the population saying, oh, wait a minute. Oh, we shifted, we changed. And so now I think maybe there's a possibility that we're starting to then see as women what is going to happen, or what are the specific impacts of the shift, not just for ourselves, but how it happens for men. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. You know what? I love what you're saying, because listen, I know there's been a whole lot of discussion online about traditional marriages and relationships versus this quote unquote modern women and modern relationships. And I mean, really, like, my response to that is that we have to get with the times. We just have to get with the times. And I don't think it's very realistic for men and women to think that we could just go backwards. It is not.
Yes.
I've been reading a book about the history of marriage, and I think it was like so fascinating about like how it started, in pre-industrial age, when everybody lived on farms, right? Everybody lived on a farm. It
right.
Was like
exactly.
You had to be married. Like, it was just mandatory to be married because you would actually starve. If you didn't get married and have children and have a farm of people, you would not live. So marriage was seen as a for real survival mechanism. And then post-revolution, post
industrial
is it? Yeah, industrial revolution.
Mm-hmm.
When okay, so that's when people were going into the factories and they were working outside of the home, and people were moving away from farms, and they were moving into the inner cities. So families did not need to be so large. And by the way, pre-industrialism, if something happened, if you died during childbirth, which happened a lot back then, it was just basically like, let's bury my wife, and I got to go tomorrow and find another one, because we got to,
wow.
because winter is coming, and somebody's got to take care of these kids, and we have to mow the lawns, and or the fields, plow the fields. I don't even know the language back then, but it was a survival, whatever it is. Somebody had to like bring in the hogs and get the chickens together and cook.
That's
And
right.
like it was mandatory, because if you were not married, you were dead. There was
That's
nothing
right.
else for you. And then people started moving into the cities and started becoming very populated. And then that changed marriage. And of course, the war with Rosie the Riveter starting to work. So, we see some of these things, right? And in these changing of economics, basically, the way economics have changed, that also changed the way marriage is looking. And then we go forward into the 50s, and oh my goodness, believe it or not, the 50s, in the 50s, they were talking about how everybody got married because of love. They would fall in love with somebody and get married, and it happened instantaneous. It's like, like nowadays, I'm like, whoa, hold on. Don't you just marry the first man you fall in love with, right? You have to, and what they were saying is that was right. That was when suburbs, right? That's when people worked in the city, and they had these white collar jobs, and then they went out to the suburb. They lived in the suburbs and they worked in the cities, and it was a very long commute, and a lot of women stayed home during the 50s, right? And what they were saying was that during those times, the women would just be lonely. they would meet their husbands, they would fall in love with them, but it never sustained. Those marriages were very difficult to sustain because they're living two different realities. Their husbands are in the city working these jobs. The women are in the suburbs taking care of kids, and they didn't even understand each other. He would come home from work and talk to his wife about things, and she was clueless about what he's talking about. She didn't even understand what was going on. So, and he didn't understand her world and the things that she was involved with. So a lot of those marriages were very unhappy, right? And so anyway, so the book goes into this, actually it was in the 80s was when divorce rates spiked. Do you know, Cris, do you know why in the 80s divorce rates spiked? Tell me why.
No, I have no idea. No.
Guess why divorce rates. I wonder, anybody in the chat, is it anybody listening to us, why did divorce rates spike in the 80s? And it happened in your state of California.
I have an idea. Is it because we saw an increase more so in than other decades? We saw it in the 80s that women started to work.
No. Let me tell you, in the 80s, California had a governor. And what was that governor's name? Do you know? He later became president. He later became president.
Ronald Reagan.
Yep. Ronald Reagan is the reason why divorce rates spiked in the 80s, because California was the very first state that said you can have a divorce based on irreconcilable differences. Because before then, it was impossible to get a divorce. Marriages were miserable before then. And marriages have always been miserable, right? It's in some cases. But you could not get a divorce because no one would grant it. You had to actually come up with a valid reason as to why you could get divorced. And it wasn't until Reagan came and said, okay, you know what? How about you just have unreconcilable differences? Everybody saves face. And that trend started in California. And then, of course, every other state took over that trend. And that's why divorce rates went up in the 80s. It didn't have to do with the third wave of feminism. No, it did not. It had to do with that. And so people felt more comfortable getting divorced because they could save face, and they could be like, finally, I can finally get up away from this situation. Believe it or not. And so, okay.
This is why I love talking to you.
I know, it's so very fascinating book. I gotta get the name of the book. I have to look at it on my phone later on.
Yes, please.
And then the 90s was the Oprah Winfrey era. Remember Oprah Winfrey in the
I
90s
sure
had
do.
that, what,
Absolutely.
who, Eckhart
Oprah's a
Tolle?
shero.
You
Oh
know she's
yeah,
a
Eckhart
shero, like,
Tolle. Yep.
so Eckhart Tolle came on board, and they were talking about self-actualization. It was just
Absolutely.
like, I want to be who I am, and I want to discover myself and have this self-actualization. And so that's what, that had a lot to do with the reason why marriages took a shift. And I think right now, as we speak, marriages are now shifting. And I can see it based on historical information, but I can also see it based on what I see in my office a lot of times, is where
Mm-hmm.
now we're seeing, as we talked about before, women are making about as much money as their husbands now. Okay.
Yes.
And they are sick and tired of they watch their mothers carry the load. And
That's right.
a lot of men have also watched their mothers carry the load. And a lot of men are
Yes.
wising up and saying, you know what? It needs to be a little better. We need to rethink this. And smart couples are able to sit down and say, you know what? We're going to share the financial responsibility. We're going to share the raising of the kids, and we're going to
That's right.
share our goals and values have to
Household.
be aligned,
Mm-hmm.
and we are going to be
Mm-hmm.
together and stick together. And that is why, number one, marriage rates have been decreasing, but the people who are
Mm-hmm.
getting married are staying married longer.
Mm-hmm.
They are staying married longer.
Absolutely.
That is the trend. That's what's happening right now in these 2020, what is it, 2020s, I guess.
2020s. Yeah,
2020s.
2020s.
That's what we're seeing. The new trend now is that, hey, it's just like we need to get away from this traditionalism, whatever that is. We are never going back to that. And I think a lot of men and women need to get on board with this, because guess what? The data is now telling us. And I'm a scientist to the heart. You can say what you want and come up
Absolutely.
with your little, and I love wisdom, practice wisdom, and all of
Yes.
that kind of stuff. I love that. I'm
Absolutely.
not going to put that down, but I also love data.
No.
And data
Preach.
is
Yep.
telling us now, data is also telling us right now that um, that marriages are happier. People are happier, live most fulfilling life right now. Right now is the best time to be married, because marriages are getting better. They are happy. People are more content, more satisfied in their marriage right now than they've ever been in the whole history of marriage as an institution. And I think that's beautiful.
Absolutely
There's
beautiful.
nothing holding
Yes.
anybody back from having the marriage that they need and having the marriage that they want. There's a ton of marriage therapists who are all over social media. By the way, social media is not therapy, so we just want to
Good.
get
Oh
that clear,
goodness. Yes.
right?
Let's
But there's
please,
enough
please.
there's enough information out there for you to at least have an idea of what it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's my little thing. I have to let me get, while you talk, I'm gonna get the name of the book, because it's really
Okay, good.
amazing. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'd definitely like to read it myself. And as I was thinking about, there was a lot of nuggets in what you talked about. One of the things I'm wondering over here where I was listening to it was, wow, what occurred to me is there's no role model. So
Yes.
when you talk about our parents, okay, if your parents at our age, if your parents were parenting in the 50s, 60s, and maybe early 70s, they were receiving, you know, media, not social media back in the day,
Right.
right? But they were receiving media. And there's literally
Father knows
articles.
best.
Father knows best. We see
Mhm.
articles out there that went to women. I can find that as well. If there's, if you want to see it, where it was a list of, okay, don't run the This was a list for women, for the wives.
Yes.
Don't run the vacuum after he gets home. He doesn't want to hear that. Um, don't run the washing machine because that's disturbing to his peace. He needs to come home and be comfortable, you know.
Yeah.
And hey, you know what? Maybe that was appropriate then because the woman is home. We can debate that. but and the man was at work. But the fact of the matter is, we have now moved into the 2020s where we got mom and dad working, and for many families in America, that's a must. And if we really want to go global, like it's definitely a must for, I think, even more so as we looked across the globe. You got to have a two-parent family income,
Yeah.
to raise these children to get where you want to be. Okay, it's not like the 50s in that way. But what was
Yeah.
interesting is, so now you're growing up, and what we know from a psychological perspective is one of the things we do in our relationships is we go, whether consciously or unconsciously, right? We go back to, what do we know? What have we seen?
Yes.
That would
And I'm
be
gonna
our
tell you,
parents.
yes. And I will tell you something. All of us have to be able to, and it's so interesting because I was just talking to Boyce about this earlier today. We have to be able to look at our parents' relationships, and we have to be able to think about it and say, what messages did we get that were pretty toxic? What messages
Yes,
did we get that were
absolutely.
helpful in a marriage? Because I am not, my mom is 80 years old. I am not an 80-year-old woman.
Right.
I am far from it. So I can't be somebody in the 50s and 60s who's married. I can't even live in that. I don't even know what that's like back then. It's totally different right now. We cannot carry all of the dynamics, all of the negativity that we may have seen growing up in terms of male female relationships, the toxic masculine ways, and the ways in which women are cruel to men. We can't look at those things and carry that forward into our marriages, because it's not going to sustain it. It's not going to
That's
be
right.
sustained. I'm not,
Absolutely.
because of women. Let me tell you something. I can't tell you how many women have told me that they would have left their husband had they had the money. If they had a way out and a means and the way out,
Yep.
they definitely would have ended their marriage, but they were trapped in that bug because they had all these kids that they didn't take care of. They didn't have a support system. But see, this is different now. It's different
Exactly.
now. And this is where
Exactly.
marriage is, and it's a potential. It's a potential for marriages to be wonderful. And I hate to see all of the toxicity, and we've been talking about this. I hate to see all the toxicity being thrown at men and at women, between men and women.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to see that,
Mm-hmm.
because there's no excuse for that nowadays.
No.
We don't have
No.
to take no mess from you. I don't need all your money. Look, we come into the
No.
table and we bring in the table with us. Everybody's got something that they're bringing to the table.
Exactly.
And that's what it is. And I think that it's getting to the point where women are putting a lot of pressure on men for this deep level of intimacy, and it could be pretty scary for a lot of men who aren't used to this, who didn't grow up in homes where they were encouraged to talk about how they felt and what they thought and all of those things. It's very
Absolutely.
difficult. And I think these marriages can be so beautiful because it's a wonderful opportunity for men to stretch and to grow, and for women to stretch and grow in a way, because maybe we saw some things that
Exactly.
maybe we feel like some things happened to us. I mean, just think about, there is no perfect childhood, there is no perfect marriage. All of the
Mm-mm.
things that have happened to
No.
you. So it
That's
is
right.
I see marriage right now as the perfect time for that necessary level of growth that's needed between a man and a woman in a marriage nowadays. That's never been there
Absolutely.
before.
Absolutely. We have both well, I was gonna say we have both, but we have an opportunity right now. We as a community have an
Yes.
opportunity right now to really stretch, face our fears, um, and embark on this change where you literally can have people, marriages, um, and other variations of what marriage is, whether it's, common law, um,
Hmm.
all
Oh
kinds of
yeah.
different partnerships that can now,
Yes.
and guess what? It is mutually gratifying. When
Yes.
you align your goals, guess what? You both gonna meet the same goal.
That's
You
right.
got two people working at it, at minimum. So yeah, I mean, that's where the hope lies. And that's where
Yeah.
I think the solution might lie.
Yeah. Gee whiz, Chris. Yeah, that is so true. But the dating scene, from what I'm hearing, this dating scene. Chris, tell us about the dating scene. The dating scene is
Oh,
pretty something. I mean, just to
well,
find. I mean, you're lucky just to find somebody that you enjoy sitting down and having dinner with, coffee with.
absolutely. I mean, at this point, where do you date? If you're not gonna, if I talk about my personal experience, the generation I'm in, I'm not trying to meet somebody online. You know, don't judge me. I'm just not trying to go there. I'm not ready. Haven't been
Okay.
ready all this time. But where do you meet that person? And honestly, I will go ahead and self-disclose that I've given up. If life
Chris.
kind of if life happens, Alicia, and somebody crosses my path and we hit it off and it's going to be a partnership, but I will tell you right now, at this age, when I hear about what the dating scene is like and I reflect on what
Yes.
it was like in my world, in my time, I'm like, no, no, not interested, because it comes across as a game. Again, I'm not
Wow.
that woman that's going to be um, sizing you up about how
Oh,
much money you have, but then, quite honestly, again, what we talked about earlier, that's going to be projected onto you as a woman in a lot
yes.
of cases. Not all, not all. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that diamond in the rough, not the one who's going to. Now, I mean, again, you may not be making millions of dollars. You may be working on yourself, but that is something that comes across to me as more valuable, or more attractive. And that's just not the dating scene out there right now. Um, but I can only talk limitedly about the dating scene because I'm not out there. I took myself
You're
out. I
not
said,
even
you know
out there,
what?
Chris.
You're right. I said, I'm gonna binge myself. I'm gonna be on the bench. Y'all let me know how it goes, but I'll be over here for now. You know, maybe one day I'll get off the bench and knock it out the park. We'll see. But I haven't. Unfortunately, I'm not saying that there's not men out there. I just personally have not, in my own path, found that man who wants to be a partner. That's what
Okay.
I'm looking for, a partner. That means, and when I say partner, I mean,
Yes.
I'm not looking to see how much you make. I'm looking for, can you match me in different areas? Like, do you
Yes.
have goals? Where you trying to go in your life? Like, does it match mine? It could be as specific as, I meet a man and he looks great on paper. We're hitting it off, in our interactions. And then he might spring on the, well, I like cold weather and I'm going to move to Canada. Okay, girl, I'm
Oh,
not trying to move again. That's not part of my goal. Right?
you're out.
That's just right. Now, but that has nothing to do with, that man could have been a millionaire.
Yeah.
Okay, but so there is this part too that we haven't discussed tonight about really picking the mate that is best for you. But just saying generally, as a partnership, I'm looking for a man who is willing to say, hey, you know what, I'm king, you're queen, but we partners. And there's going to be some things that you have the expertise or more knowledge about. You need to make the decision. And then there's going to be some things that I have the expertise or knowledge. It's not about, oh, man, woman. It's about who knows best, who's more fitted. If we went back to the caveman days, not trying to be the one. I'm not going to fight the man, my man, if he's like, oh, babe, I really want to go kill this cow for our dinner tonight. I'm not gonna be arguing about that. But if he's like, babe, this is the way we need to organize the household. Now I know a little thing about that.
Ooh, so you're
And
getting back into traditional roles. Okay, so Cris, this is so good. You know, we're up on the top of the hour, so we gotta end.
That's true. I know.
But thank you, everybody,
So
for reaching
Thank
out,
you.
for listening. You'll see Dr. Cris and I, we'll be back next week. We'll continue this conversation and others. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. It's been a joy.
Bye-bye.